Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutle Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami iti namine. Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine. Hare Krishna, my name is Tapan Mishra Das and I serve at the ISKCON Ministry of Education. Srila Prabhupada's books are the basis for our society of ISKCON, and we're undertaking discussions with the various senior leaders in our society to hear from them their personal realizations, their interaction, and how they guide everybody under their guidance to actually engage in reading Srila Prabhupada's books. Today, we have with us the privilege to invite to this discussion His Holiness Jayapataka Swami Maharaj. His Holiness is one of the senior most members of our society, a spiritual leader who's guiding thousands and thousands of devotees around the world. Maharaj, I'd like to thank you and welcome you to this discussion on Srila Prabhupada's books.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm glad to be part.
I'm glad to be a part.
Maharaj, we would like to begin this journey to know from you, what was your first interaction with Srila Prabhupada's books?
Well, I saw advertisement about the festival of the chariots in San Francisco.
When I saw an advertisement about the Festival of Chariots in San Francisco,
The bottom it said you could take a vegetarian meal for 25 cents.
at the bottom it said that you could take vegetarian meals at 25 cents.
I searched out the temple. I went there.
I searched out the temple and went there.
I bought a book called The Easy Journey to Other Planets.
I bought a book called Easy Journey to Other Planets.
Since I was a science student, very interesting because it talked about antimatter and
Since I was a science student, it was very interesting because it was talking about antimatter.
I took the meal. I wanted to give my 25 cents,
I took the meal and I wanted to give my 25 cents,
but no one would take it.
but no one would take it.
They told me to go next door, the boutique, and see Gargamuni, he would take my money.
They asked me to go to next door to see Gargamuni and that he would take my money.
So I went there. Sure enough, he was happy to take my money.
So I went there, sure enough, and he was happy to take my money.
He sold me a set of Srila Prabhupada's Srimad Bhagavatam.
He showed me a set of
He
Srila.
sold me.
He sold me a set of Srila Prabhupada's Bhagavatam.
At that time, there were only 3 volumes.
At that time, there were only 3 volumes.
First canto,
First canto,
printed in India.
printed in India.
So I took that and I started to read it.
So I took that and I started to read it.
So it was very, very interesting.
So it was very interesting.
So that's
Maharaj, in your first encounter with Srila Prabhupada's books, you shared with us, as a science student, you were interested, you got intrigued by antimatter. Is there something else you recollect from your first encounter with Srila Prabhupada's books, from what you read, which inspired you to come back to the temple or meet with the devotees again?
I have many questions.
I had many questions.
And so Gauravani, he told me to go in the back and see Jayananda Prabhu.
So Gargamuni told me, go to the back and see Jayananda Prabhu.
I went there and he engaged me in building the rock car.
So I went there and he engaged me in building the Rath cart.
So Then I decided to meet Srila Prabhupada.
Then I decided to meet Srila Prabhupada,
And then at that time, he was in Montreal.
and at that time he was in Montreal.
So just about 3 weeks after I came to the movement,
So
I flew to Montreal and saw Prabhupada.
So it was just like 3 weeks when I came to the movement. I flew to Montreal and I saw Srila Prabhupada.
So Prabhupada said that he would initiate me, but I had to read the Bhagavad Gita 10 times.
Prabhupada said that he would initiate me, but that I have to read Srimad Bhagavad Gita 10 times.
So I spent a couple hours every day reading Bhagavad Gita,
So I spent couple of hours every day reading Bhagavad Gita,
and I was able to finish the Gita 10 times.
and I was able to finish reading Bhagavad Gita 10 times.
I still have a Gita 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4.
Still, I have the Gita where I have marked 1, 2, 3, 4 till 10.
So, from the very beginning, and people who are reading the Bhagavad Gita, reading the Shastra.
Right from the very beginning, we had the people who were reading Shastras.
Pradyumna Prabhu, he was there in our temple.
Pradyumna Prabhu, he was there in our temple.
And he was regularly reading. He was a scholar.
And he was regular in reading, and he was a scholar.
So, I had a very good association. We didn't have many books.
I had a good association, although we did not have many books.
At that time, Prabhupada said to read he could read the teachings of Lord Chaitanya by Professor Sanyal.
At that time, Srila Prabhupada said that we can read the teachings of Lord Chaitanya by Professor Sanyal.
I don't remember the exact title, but something like that.
I don't remember the exact title, but it was something like that.
Srimad Bhagavatam first canto,
Srimad Bhagavatam first canto,
some small books, Bhagavad Gita,
some small books, Bhagavad Gita,
and teachings of Lord Chaitanya
and teachings of Lord Chaitanya
by Professor Sanyal.
by Professor Sanyal.
I was a
Maharaj, you were definitely a very avid reader, given that you read 10 times Bhagavad Gita and books. Besides yourself and Pradyumna Prabhu, who was also a Pandit, as Prabhupada called him himself, what was the overall culture, Maharaj, in terms of how were devotees relating to Srila Prabhupada's books? What was the culture of reading at that time in the 60s and early 70s?
I said, God stressed a lot reading books.
Well, as I said, that Prabhupada stressed a lot for reading his books.
And I was giving Allah, by reading the Bhagavad Gita 10 times, I was giving a course in Loyola University with 2 credits.
Although by reading Bhagavad Gita 10 times, I was giving a course in Loyola University for 2 credits.
And I also gave a course in McGill University, but there was no credit.
I also gave a course in McGill University, but there was no credit.
So at that time we had very few books.
So at that time we had very few books.
I was very eager to read it.
And we were very
whatever was there.
And we were very eager to read it, whatever was there.
Maharaj, the devotees then at that time were full-time devotees, and they were serving Prabhupada day and night. And would devotees approach Srila Prabhupada with a request that, oh, we don't have time to read, or we're finding difficulty out of our services, take our time? What would Prabhupada's response be in such circumstances?
No, they had to go to Prabhupada excuses.
No one would dare to go to Prabhupada with excuses
And they'd be blasted.
because they would be blasted.
You know, he said if you want initiation, read Bhagavad Gita 10 times.
He said, if you want initiation, read Bhagavad Gita 10 times.
So that was the standard.
So that was the standard.
And so I don't know if everyone else did it, but I took it very serious.
I don't know if anyone else did it, but I took it very seriously.
I saw everyone else did.
I assumed that everyone else did.
At that time, Back to Godhead was one of the few publications we had.
At that time, Back to Godhead was one of the few publications we had.
But I would go out as a new bhakta, and people would ask me questions.
But when I would go out as a new bhakta, people would ask me questions.
And I didn't always have the answer.
So I did not always have the answers.
So then I would say, well, I'll tell you tomorrow.
So then I would say, I'll tell you tomorrow.
And then I would go back, study the books, get the answer, and I'd be ready.
And then I would go back, study the books, ready with the answers, and then I would come and give the answers.
Maharaj, it is mentioned that Srila Prabhupada lives forever in his books. Srila Prabhupada mentioned this himself. Do you have some personal realization after Prabhupada's departure from this world, which you can share with all of us, where you had the same feeling that Srila Prabhupada lives through his books?
You know, the Srimad Bhagavatam is the literary incarnation of Krishna.
You know, the Srimad Bhagavatam is the literary incarnation of Krishna.
And naturally, we need to associate a lot with the word Krishna.
Naturally, we need to associate a lot with the words of Krishna.
And naturally, the purports of Srila Prabhupada would give us some deeper realization.
And naturally, the purpose of Srila Prabhupada would give us deeper realizations.
Yeah. So, one time I had a high fever in Mayapur.
So one time I had a high fever in Mayapur.
And then I was, sometimes read the book, sometimes I'd listen to Prabhupada lecture.
And at that time, sometimes I would read the book, sometimes I would listen to Prabhupada's lectures.
And so then I found that by coming in contact with Srila Prabhupada, although physically I was suffering like anything.
So then I found that physically being in contact with, physically while I'm suffering, but being in contact with Srila Prabhupada,
Actually, was feeling spiritual bliss.
Actually, I was feeling spiritual bliss.
So that was something unique.
So that was something unique.
I was feeling spiritual happiness, while physically I was suffering.
I was feeling spiritual happiness while physically I was suffering.
So that's a unique experience.
So that's a unique
I
experience.
could understand that a spiritual happiness is something separate from the body.
I could understand that spiritual happiness is something separate from the body.
Maharaj, we'd like to hear from you about what you think are the benefits for us practicing sadhakas. What are the benefits of reading Srila Prabhupada's books every day?
Mind is filled with different material experiences.
Naturally, our mind is filled with different material experiences.
And we need to replace those spiritual thoughts.
And we need to replace those with the spiritual thoughts.
So it's just essential to hear regularly, to read regularly from Srila Prabhupada.
So it's essential to hear and read regularly from Srila Prabhupada,
So that we can fill our mind with spiritual experiences.
so that we can fill our mind with the spiritual experiences.
Otherwise, our material concepts and material experiences will still be uppermost in our mind.
Otherwise, our material concepts and experiences will be uppermost in the mind.
So that's why it's essential to regularly purify the mind by reading Srimad Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita, the teachings of Prabhupada.
That's why it is essential to read regularly Srimad Bhagavatam, Srimad Bhagavad Gita, and hear Srila Prabhupada.
Lord Chaitanya gave instructions of which reading Krishna's teachings was one of those.
Lord Chaitanya gave 3 instructions, from which reading was one of those.
So he said, Prabhupada said that Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam are both Krishna teachings.
Srila Prabhupada said Bhagavad Gita and Bhagavatam are both Krishna's teachings.
Gita is by Krishna,
Gita is by Krishna,
Bhagavatam is about Krishna.
and Bhagavatam is about Krishna.
Maharaj, you have such a busy schedule with many meetings, interactions, classes, etc. Do you still find some time to hear from Prabhupada or read Prabhupada's books, or somebody to read it to you? Do you find time in your busy schedule?
Apart, some of the classes we have like 50% and reading from Prabhupada books, and then I give a class on that.
50% of what classes I give is from Srila Prabhupada's books.
And then when I take a rest at night, I have somebody to read for a half hour.
And then when I take a rest at night, I have someone to read for me half an hour.
So I'm now going to the Bhagavatam I don't know how many times.
So now I'm going through Bhagavatam, I don't know how many times.
Because I'm getting some new information.
And I'm getting some new information.
Although maybe this is the 5th or 6th time.
Although maybe this is the 5th or 6th time.
And I've been asking disciples that if they want to take first initiation, they can read the Bhagavad Gita at least twice.
So I'm asking the candidates who wants to take first initiation, to read Bhagavad Gita at least twice.
And read the first canto of Bhagavatam.
And read the first canto of Bhagavatam.
And other books.
And other books.
Like Prabhupada, Teaching Lord Chaitanya, etc.
Like Prabhupada's small books, teachings of Lord Chaitanya, etc.
And then the second initiation, I say Bhakti Shastri, and I read up to the 3rd canto.
And for second initiation, devotees have to do Bhakti Shastri, and they would read up to 3rd canto.
Although I saw that Atula Krishna, Atula Krishna, he sent some references that Prabhupada said to take sannyas once you have the Bhakti Vaibhav.
So Atul Krishna Prabhu had sent some references which says that one who want to take sannyas, they should have Bhakti Vaibhav.
And to take a second initiation, to have a Bhakti Shastri.
For second initiation, one should have Bhakti Shastri.
And to be a guru, one should have bhaktivedanta.
And to be a guru, one should have bhaktivedanta.
So, if you want to study the whole Srimad Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita.
So he wanted people to study the whole Srimad Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita,
and then be able to give class on that.
and be able to give class on them.
And also there's, right now I'm trying to compile Chaitanya Lila.
Right now I'm trying to compile Chaitanya Leela.
He just left Navadip to take sannyas.
Mahaprabhu just left Navadvip to take sannyas.
And so that's partly from the Chaitanya Charitamrita, partly from other books.
So that's partly from Chaitanya Charitamrita and partly from other books.
So a constant learning process of reading.
Maharaj, it's so inspiring. It's a constant learning process every day, as Maharaj just described. Maharaj, it's so inspiring that despite your such a busy schedule, you're able to give time to read, give lectures from Srila Prabhupada's books. Maharaj, what inspiration and message, besides your own personal conduct, can you give to leaders and devotees? Because we're often faced with this question where devotees are saying, we have no time. We have no time left because of our work, our services, and with preaching, etc. Could you please share something with all of us as to how to create that time and how to address this issue of the mind where we find ourselves without time to read?
Well, you see that His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada, he was a Grihastha, he had a job as a magistrate.
We see that Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he was a grihastha, he had a job, he was a magistrate.
He had time for his family, he had time for preaching,
He gave his time for his family, for preaching,
and japa,
his japa,
and time also for reading and writing.
and he also got time for reading and writing.
It's a question of time management.
It's a question of time management.
It's not whether we should read, we have to read.
It's not whether we should read, we have to read.
And then how to make time for that, that's the time management.
And then how to make time for that, that is the time management.
Just like as a grihastha, you have to give time to your family.
Just as a grihastha, you have to give time to your family.
And similarly, as a devotee, we have to give time to study the Shastra.
Similarly, as a devotee, we have to give time to study Shastra.
Just as it said, books are the basis and preaching is the essence.
Just as it is said, books are the basis and preaching is the essence.
But how we cannot preach unless we have the book basis.
But we cannot preach if we don't have the book basis.
We have to read the books and we want to preach.
If we have to read the books if we want to preach.
Prabhupada said that we should be like a lawyer.
Prabhupada said that we should be like a lawyer.
We should know the scripture.
We should know the scriptures.
And you see that these lawyers are all high court, this case, we go that case.
Just as a lawyer gives reference of different cases, high court cases, other court cases.
We give reference to the different scripture.
So we give reference to the different scriptures.
Sadhu, Shastra, Guru.
Sadhu, Shastra, Guru.
So we have to give time to read the books.
We have to give time to read the books.
Maharaj, thank you so much for inspiring us that we must take out the time. And clearly, after hearing from you and seeing your personal example, we hope that all of us will readjust our lives to take out more time to read. Maharaj, when we're reading Srila Prabhupada's books, a lot of us, we get overwhelmed because the Bhagavatam is so many cantos, so many volumes. Then there's the Chaitanya Charitamrita, the Bhagavad Gita. Just looking at them, many of us get overwhelmed. How should we approach the books that we are able to then read them systematically. Is there something that you can share with us as tips on what should be our technique to approach the books?
I see these books have been simplified for us.
You see that these books are being simplified for us.
We study the Bhagavatam. It's very simple.
We study the Bhagavatam, it's very simple.
It's 18,000 verses.
It's 18,000 verses,
12 cantos.
12 cantos.
Otherwise, there's 17 Puranas.
Otherwise, there are 17 Puranas.
In Skanda Purana, there's 200,000 verses.
In Skanda Purana, there are 200,000 verses.
Mahabharata,
Mahabharata,
Ramayana,
then Ramayana,
108 Upanishads,
108 Upanishads,
Vedanta Sutra,
Vedanta Sutra,
4 Vedas.
4 Vedas.
So, and then Narada Pancharatra,
Then Narada Pancharatra, etc.
So if we just read Gita and Bhagavatam, that's sufficient.
If we just read Bhagavad Gita and Bhagavatam, that's sufficient.
Bhagavatam is the ripened fruit of the Vedic tree.
So Bhagavatam is the ripened fruit of the Vedic tree.
So actually Prabhupada given us a condensed version. If we read the Bhagavatam, we know everything we need to know.
Actually, Srila Prabhupada had given us a condensed version. If we read the Bhagavatam, we know everything what we have to know.
Maharaj, nowadays within ISKCON, sometimes devotees are asking that there are so many books to read. And, sometimes we feel that we should read some other books before reading Prabhupada's books, etc. What is your guidance in this regard, Maharaj, when we have now hundreds of books? What should be our priority and how should we approach this question?
Well, we do have an option now. They have many books.
Well, they do have an option now. Now there are many books.
But we know that the Srimad Bhagavatam is especially important.
But we know that Srimad Bhagavatam is especially important.
And that's the literary incarnation of the Lord.
That's the literary incarnation of the Lord.
Bhagavad Gita is the song of God.
And Bhagavad Gita is a song of God.
It was spoken by Krishna.
It was personally spoken by Krishna.
So while we have other books which give us some additional information,
so while we have some other books which gives us some additional information,
our basic education is to read Gita and Bhagavatam.
our basic education is to read Gita and Bhagavatam.
And we can't avoid that.
And we cannot avoid that.
That's our rice and dal.
That's our main meal, our rice and dal.
And other books we can read to help in our education.
Other books we can read to help our education.
But basic books we should study.
But basic books we should study.
Maharaj, you have studied Srila Prabhupada's books so many times, and in the course of your writings and bringing out more books to please Srila Prabhupada, you may be also reading the books of various acharyas and various authors in our sampradaya. Maharaj, can you help us from your realizations and experience, help us understand the significance of the Bhaktivedanta purports vis-a-vis the writings of the other acharyas and the various books that there may be, and what is the significance for an ISKCON devotee when we are approaching the Bhaktivedanta purports versus everything else that may be available?
Prabhupada would visit Mayapur twice a year.
You see, Prabhupada would visit Mayapur twice a year.
And he come in the fall, and then month and a half.
And he would come in and stay for 1.5 months
In the fall.
in the fall.
And then he come at God winter time
And then he would come at Gaur Purnima time
for about 2 weeks.
for about 2 weeks.
So 1/6 of the year he would spend in Mayapur.
So 1/6 of the year he would spend in Mayapur.
Now, when he would come in the fall, I would see that every night he would be translating his books.
And when he would come in the fall, I would see every night he would be translating his books.
He had a special Sanskrit Bhagavatam,
He had a special Sanskrit Bhagavatam
which had the 7 tikas,
which had 7 tikas,
7 commentaries
7 commentaries
of Srila Swami, different acharyas,
of different acharyas like Sridhar Swami,
Madhvacharya,
Madhvacharya.
like that. So he would read all these commentaries, and then in his purports, he put the different acharyas' commentaries.
So he would read all these commentaries, and in his purport he would put commentaries of acharyas,
Give his personal experiences
gives his personal experiences
and realizations.
and realizations.
I think it's very important because he has taken the essence of all the different acharyas.
So I think it's very important because he has taken the essence from all different acharyas.
You don't need to actually study all the different
We
acharyas.
don't actually need to study all different
He's
acharyas.
already done it for us.
He has already done it for us.
And if one wants to be, there's a danger that if you read too many books, you get bewildered.
So there's a danger if you read too many books, you can get bewildered.
And so Prabhupada gave us, I would say that his purports and the essence of all the acharyas.
So I would say that Srila Prabhupada, in his purports, he has given the essence of all the acharyas.
In other words, we have the cream of the essence of all the teachings.
So therefore, we have the essence of all the teachings.
Yes, Maharaj. And we are very grateful to Srila Prabhupada for giving us almost on a platter what we need to progress in our spiritual life. And we're grateful to Bhagavatas like yourself who are teaching from your personal example what it is to practice devotional life. Maharaj, I would like to ask you, often we hear the word Shastra Chakshu. The word Shastra Chakshu, that one should see the world through the eyes of the scriptures. Maharaj, please share with us, as a devotee, how does one see the world through the eyes of Srila Prabhupada's books? What has your experience being in guiding so many devotees around the world? And what happens if we stop doing so? So how must we do it? And what happens if we don't do it, Maharaj?
And see, just like learning to fly,
Just like learning to fly,
there are different levels.
there are different levels.
And the first level, you have to see where you're going.
First level is to see where you're going.
But then the next level is that if you're going in a cloud, you can't see anything.
But next level, if we are going in the cloud, then you cannot see anything.
You have to depend on your instruments.
Then you have to depend on your instruments.
The instruments tell you, your body may tell you the opposite thing. You have to depend on your instruments.
Your body may tell you the opposite thing, but you have to depend on the instruments.
Similarly, by seeing the things through the scripture, we get a proper understanding.
Similarly, by reading the scriptures properly, we get the understanding.
We may not have the same understanding with our normal mind and senses.
We may not have the same understanding with our mind and senses.
We have to depend on the vision of the Shastra.
We have to depend on the vision of the Shastras.
It's like the Bhagavad Gita tells us that the sage sees the elephant, the dog eater, the dog, Brahman, everyone equally.
Just like the Bhagavad Gita says that a sage sees the elephant, Brahmin, the dog eater equally.
Because he sees that all have the same spirit soul.
Because he sees that all have the same spirit soul.
And that ultimately the spirit is similar.
And ultimately the soul is similar.
So, from material vision, we may see differences.
But from our material vision, we may see differences.
Just like now, we're having a racial equality and protests around the world.
Just now they are having racial inequality protests around the world.
Black Lives Matter.
Black Lives Matter.
Actually, to see things in a spiritual vision, we know are not the body.
Actually, to see things with a spiritual vision, we know that we are not the body.
We're not white, black, brown, yellow.
We are not white, black, brown, yellow, or whatever.
We're not male or female.
We are not male or female.
Ultimately, we're spirit soul.
Ultimately, we are the spirit soul.
So there's an external vision, and one thing, but the internal spiritual vision is another.
So external vision is one thing, but the internal spiritual vision is another.
If we understand the things from the point of view of the scripture,
if you understand the things from the point of view of the scriptures,
you can have peace in the world.
then we can have peace in the world.
And we know inequality of races.
There will be no inequality of races.
But because you don't see from the Shastra,
but because we don't see from the Shastras,
people see externally.
People see externally.
Therefore, there's racial inequality and various other problems.
Therefore, there is racial inequality, and that raises other problems.
Yes, Maharaj. And clearly, in order to see through the Shastra Chakshu, we must first read and take shelter and hear them very attentively to be able to see the world through that. Maharaj, what advice and what practical tips would you like to offer to the ISKCON as a society? That what must leaders do in their congregation, their communities, to increase this mood and spirit of reading Prabhupada's books every day sincerely? Please guide us. What should we do as across the society?
It comes to mind that Prabhupada said the best way to study the books with two people.
It comes to my mind that Srila Prabhupada said to study the books, the best way is to read with two people.
Maybe a husband and wife or two people read and then they share with each other.
Maybe husband and wife or two people, they read and then they share with each other.
And then in our bhaktivedanta meetings, we also have tried to discuss the topic and then understand it and tell our realizations and applications.
So in our bhaktivedanta meetings, we try to read the books and we try to share our apprehensions and experiences.
Realizations.
Realizations.
Not so then having a regular time that we give every day for reading.
So having a regular time we give every day for reading,
that could be an important practice.
That could be an important practice.
I think in the Chowpatty temple they do that.
I think in the Chowpatty temple they do that.
And in various temples they do.
And in various temples they do.
So this would be an important asset.
But this would be an important asset.
That people could set aside a little time
That people could set aside a little time
to study Prabhupada's books.
to study Prabhupada books.
Yes, Maharaj. And definitely around the temples during this week and through this week, we're trying to reach out the leaders to help them hear from personalities like yourself to be able to implement this across the various temples and centers around the world of ISKCON. Maharaj, in terms of, you shared with us so many nice examples of how you did it yourself. You also shared with us how you're encouraging devotees who are taking initiation from you to read before. And even in Bhakti Vriksha, the various communities that you're setting up, you're encouraging devotees to read as well. Maharaj, I want to ask, we sometimes come across a question from devotees where they say, we have already read the book and now we just want to chant and we want to perform deity worship. Or they feel we know the subject matter, whereas from your life we can see that you continue to read it even to this day, every single day. Maharaj, is there ever a time where we have read enough? If not, then why does this thought of it's enough, now let's just chant and worship the deity? Please help us navigate through this framework, what is right and what is wrong.
I was thinking that how Prabhupada was going through such a great austerity.
I was thinking that how Srila Prabhupada was going through such a great austerity.
Every night he wake up at midnight
Every night he would wake up at midnight
and translate to about 3 or 4.
and translate till about 3 or 4.
And so he would do his writings of that. His association with the Guru Maharaj, his life experience, his realization.
So he was doing this because his association with his Guru Maharaj, his realizations,
the version of the other acharyas,
the version of the other acharyas,
how much he did to give to us this legacy.
how much he did to give us this legacy.
I don't think we have much retention.
I don't think we have much retention.
That by reading the books once, are you ready to take the Bhakti Vaibhava or Bhaktivedanta?
That by reading the book just once, are you ready to take the Bhaktivedanta, Bhaktivedanta test?
To what degree have they retained that knowledge?
To what degree they have retained the knowledge?
And we've continually getting, we were subjected to the TV news or
we are subjected to the TV news, the newspapers.
So while we get other information, which are basically contaminated, we should get also some pure association.
We should also get some pure association.
And we should see that reading is something that we've done it. All right. We should see that this is a association we have with Krishna.
We should not see that we have done the reading. We should see that it is an association with Krishna.
Like Srinivas Acharya, he went to Gadadhar Prabhu.
Like Srinivas Acharya, he went to Gadadhar Prabhu.
And said he wanted to study the Bhagavatam under him.
And he said that he wanted to study Srimad Bhagavatam under him.
But Gadadhar showed him Bhagavatam.
But Gadadhar Prabhu showed him Bhagavatam.
and that was in the different cantos. The whole Bhagavatam was washed out.
And that was in different cantos. The whole Bhagavatam was washed out
With his tears of love.
with his tears of love.
So I don't know if our Pujari is talking about when you read the Bhagavatam, it's washed out with his tears.
So I don't know what the pujaris you are talking about. When they read the Bhagavatam is washed out with their tears,
Have they reached that realization of pure love of Krishna?
have they this realizations of pure love of Krishna?
When they realize and they read about different avatars,
When they realize or read about different avatars,
their heart melted.
did, is their heart melted?
Are they feeling bhava or prema?
Are they feeling bhava or prema?
By associating with Krishna through the Srimad Bhagavatam,
By associating with Krishna through Srimad Bhagavatam,
by associating with Lord Chaitanya through the Chaitanya Charitamrita,
by associating with Lord Chaitanya through Chaitanya Charitamrita,
we get maybe the first time you read it like a fact. I read it again and again.
maybe first time you read it like a fact, but when you read it again and again,
It starts to get a whole deeper realization.
you start to get a whole deeper realization.
And just like Prakrit Maharaj, for 7 days and 7 nights, you're listening to non-stop to the Srimad Bhagavatam.
Just like Parikshit Maharaj, for 7 days and 7 nights, he was non-stop listening to Srimad Bhagavatam.
Not eating, not drinking.
Not eating, not drinking.
After a couple of days of not eating and drinking, what were we doing?
After a couple of days of not eating and drinking,
What were we doing?
what would we be doing?
Water,
Water, water. Oh,
what was he doing?
what was he doing?
He's asking Srila Swami, tell me more. What did my wonderful Lord Krishna do?
He is asking Sukdev Goswami more and more. Tell me what.
Tell me more. I want to hear more of my wonderful Lord.
I want to hear more. What did my wonderful Lord do?
Have these pujaris, have they reached that level?
Have these pujaris have reached that level?
The whole point of reading the Prabhupada books is to come to the pure level of the original speakers, the peers of Bhagavatam.
The whole point of reading Srila Prabhupada books is to reach the level of these pure devotees.
Maharaj, you have shaken us out of our slumber today. You've dispelled many of our misconceptions about reading. You've shared with your personal life how you still take association of Srila Prabhupada and given us a goal that what should be our goal when we pick up Srimad Bhagavatam, to realize it and to reach the level of devotion that you just now described. Maharaj, we are very, very grateful for your guidance today on this topic of reading Srila Prabhupada's books every day. Is there a parting message that you'd like to give on this occasion of the Srila Prabhupada's reading week, where we're trying to encourage devotees to read more regularly? Would you like to leave a parting message for the leaders and devotees?
I think that there's any time we can say, I really know.
So I don't think that there is time that we can say that I have done enough.
In this interview with you, I'm feeling somewhat guilty.
I'm feeling somewhat guilty.
Maybe there's some time I wasted that I could be reading more.
Maybe there is some time which I wasted, I would be reading more.
So that way I'm feeling inspired also.
That way I'm feeling inspired also.
Whatever I'm doing to try to do more.
Whatever I'm doing to try to do more.
And we just observed the Bhadra Purnima,
As we just observed the Bhadra Purnima,
and we heard how the Srimad Bhagavatam is the Shabda Avatar.
and we heard that how Srimad Bhagavatam is the Shabda Avatar.
How can we get enough association with Krishna?
So how can we get enough association with Krishna?
Is there any point when there's too much associated with Krishna?
Is there any point where we have too much association with Krishna?
So, Prabhupada, he would have us read his books
So Srila Prabhupada, he would have us read his
to
book
him,
to him.
and he would say that these books I have to hear because Krishna is speaking to me.
And he said, these books I have to hear me personally because Krishna is speaking through me.
So when I hear the book, what I've written, I get some new realization.
So when I hear the books I have written, I get some new realization.
So Prabhupada, he would listen to his own books. What do you think of us?
So when Prabhupada, he would listen to his own books, what to speak of us.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Maharaj, what you described as the legacy of Srila Prabhupada, I pray and hope that all of our viewers will take it to their heart. Today you touched our hearts by your words and your experiences, and this message of the proper mood of associating with Krishna through the Bhaktivedanta purports. Much like an Uttamadhikari, an elevated devotee, always expresses the desire to do more, you're expressing like that. We seek your blessings that at our stage of sadhaka, we can follow in the footsteps of saintly devotees like yourself, and also have a proper mood and attitude to serve Srila Prabhupada, his books, and the senior Vaishnavas. Maharaj, on behalf of the Ministry of Education, I thank you for your time and thank you for the inspiration to read Prabhupada's books every day and make Srila Prabhupada's books the very basis of our spiritual life.
Well,
Hari Bol.
thank you for giving this opportunity
Thank you for giving me this opportunity
to talk about Prabhupada books.
to talk about Prabhupada books.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Maharaj. Hare Krishna. All glories to Srila Prabhupada.
Srila Prabhupada ki
Jai.
Jai.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama,